The Premier League is 1 week away from starting back up again, and we are all wondering who is going down, who is going up, who is going to win, and who is going to do absolutely nothing. Here's what I think. Yep. The team at the bottom of the country is finishing bottom of the table. Southampton are obviously one of the 3 newly promoted clubs this season. And to be honest, I don't believe they have strengthened enough to keep themselves up. Some of their business has been quite interesting. Obviously, I think their probably best signing is Brendan Brereton-Diaz from Villarreal. I think that's a pretty good signing. He had a solid second half of the season with Sheffield United. I don't believe it'll be enough to keep them up. They've obviously acquired the likes of Taylor Harwood-Bellis from Man City, as well as Flynn Downs and old boy Adam Lallana on a free from Brighton. And I think these will possibly help them with a lot of their problems, but I don't think it'll be enough to keep them up. So personally for me, I think they're going straight back down. The luckiest team in the Premier League, Nottingham Forest. I don't believe they're going to be that lucky this season. They were incredibly lucky last season. They got a points deduction and still managed to stay up. This time, they're not going to be that lucky. They were lucky last season that there were 3 teams drastically worse than they were. This season, they ain't going to be that lucky. So personally, I believe they're going to go down. I think Nuno Espirito Santo is probably going to get sacked at some point midway through the season. I think they'll bring in someone else, but I think the damage will be done by that point. So I think Forest are going down. Now, under normal circumstances, I think Leicester would probably stay up. I think they've got a good enough squad for that. However, this has not been a normal circumstances time for Leicester. They have lost both their manager and their star player that helped them get out of the Championship, Enzo Maresca and Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall. They've since replaced him with Steve Cooper, and I don't believe their additions have been incredibly inspiring. They've obviously acquired the likes of Bobby Deco-Dover-Reid on a free, Michael Golding from the Chelsea Academy. The biggest killer for them, though, is the fact that they are due to be getting a massive points deduction. That might be their massive Achilles heel. I think their squad is good enough to stay up. I have doubts over Steve Cooper. That combined with the points deduction, I think is probably going to take them down. Oh yes, Ipswich are staying up. I really admire the job that Kieran McKenna has done, taking these guys from League One to the Championship to the Premier League inside of what, 2 years is impeccable. I think it's a brilliant deal. Not only that, I think they've done a really good job in their recruitment. They've obviously brought back Amari Hutchinson as their club record signing, which is a brilliant piece of business because he was fantastic for them in the Championship. They've obviously acquired the likes of Liam Delap, been able to acquire Burnley goalkeeper Muric. The key to this is Kieran McKenna. Keeping him was essential to Ipswich having even a chance to survive in the Premier League. I don't think Ipswich are going down. Everton fans, I'm afraid it's going to be a very rough season once again. Your key signing has been Jake O'Brien, Irish centre-back from Lyon. You haven't really been that active in the transfer market, and obviously on top of that, you lost your star midfielder, Amadou Onana, to Aston Villa. I don't think Everton have strengthened enough in order to get any higher than they were. I don't really think it's going to be a successful season. I know pretty much everybody was under the assumption that Brentford finished as low as they did last season without Ivan Toney. It was a combination of being without Ivan Toney and being without Bryan Mbeumo for as long as they were, because obviously that first half of the season they were getting carried by Bryan Mbeumo. It does appear, for the minute at least, they're going to be able to keep hold of Ivan Toney. I think keeping up with Toney will be a big move for them, and if they can keep hold of Bryan Mbeumo as well, that'd be an even bigger move, keeping both of them intact. But if they can't, I think it's going to be a rough season for them. And even then, I think it's going to be a pretty rough season for them in general. Toney did not look the same player he was before his ban when he came back. So I think he's going to struggle a lot more. I don't think Mbeumo's going to be as effective. So personally, 15th. Wolverhampton Wanderers. I'll be honest, this is probably a little bit more reasonable. Last year, Wolves was a lot of people's favourite pricks to go down. However, they did a really good job. Gary O'Neill did a fantastic job keeping Wolves up. And I think they've probably going to do a similar job this season. They've obviously now lost starman Pedro Neto to Chelsea, so that makes their job a lot harder. But they've still retained quite a few of their important assets. Still, Wang Hee-chan and Matthias Cunha, still got them. They have lost captain Max Kilman to West Ham, so that's a bit of a blow for them, and they're going to have to replace him somehow. For now, I think 14's respectable for Wolves. Our little brothers down the road, I believe they're finishing around this point. They finished, I believe, that here last season, or around this point at least. Marco Silva is a very good manager. I think he'll do a decent job, but I don't think they'll be anywhere near a relegation threat. Fulham, they'll be okay. However, they have had some notable excommunications. Obviously, the biggest, and I mean biggest, João Palhinha to Bayern. That is a big miss for them. They have brought in Emil Smith-Rowe from Arsenal, which I think is actually going to be a pretty decent signing for them. It'll be very interesting to see what Fulham do, but I think they're going to be okay this season. Southern Hipsters, Brighton and Hove Albion. Yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty similar finish to last season. Their biggest problem was they failed to adequately replace Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister. And I'm going to be honest, I don't think they've done enough in the transfer window to truly replace or fill in the gaps where they needed to. Now, it's Brighton, so anything they've done in the transfer window could be gold or it could be nothing. So we will wait and find out, but as of now, I've got Brighton finishing here. Andoni Iraola had a very shaky start to last season, and eventually it started to click for him. He eventually got all the players on side, and it eventually started to work for him. It all started to make sense to them. And Dominic Solanke started firing like a madman for them. However, Dominic Solanke will now be firing for Spurs. Solanke is now going to Spurs for a reported £60 million. They will look to probably replace him in the coming days, whoever that might be. However, I think whoever it is will probably not be able to fill the void left by Solanke. Iraola does seem like a pretty quality manager, so I think they will likely be fine, but I can't see them making any progress up the table without... If they'd been able to retain Solanke, I think they would have been able to go somewhere. But with losing him, and on top of... They've also lost Lloyd Kelly to Newcastle, let's not forget. On top of all that, I can't see them moving up the table. I don't think they'll go down anywhere, but I don't think they'll... I can't see them going up. Like Bournemouth before them, they have also lost their massive talisman player in Michael Olise. However, they have managed to retain their other talisman, Eberechi Eze. Now, keeping one of Eze or Olise was crucial for Glasner. Absolutely crucial. If he managed to lose both of them, he would have been in trouble, because we saw at the end of last season how crucial those two were to the way Glasner was playing. Glasner ended the season brilliantly with Crystal Palace. Mateta was absolutely firing at the end of the season. They could very well push European places. I think it's very possible for him to do that. Oliver Glasner, I do believe, is a fantastic manager. There are only, 3 managers in the Premier League that have won a European Cup. One of them is Pep Guardiola. The other is Unai Emery. Oliver Glasner's the third. I think Palace will do pretty well this season. 10th. Now, this could be probably the most controversial pick on this list, because I know this is just about where Newcastle finished last season. I don't believe they've done the best job in the transfer window. The best thing they've done in the transfer window is they've not lost any key players, specifically Alexander Isak and Anthony Gordon. They've also brought in the likes of Lloyd Kelly as well, which I think is probably a pretty solid addition to their defence. But other than that, they haven't made any key additions. Obviously, the big problem they struggled with last season was injuries. That was the huge issue. I don't believe they've developed their second team enough. Now, not having the European games is going to help them massively, because that means they'll have less games and less high action games to play, so they won't have as many injuries. I lost a bit of faith in Eddie Howe. I think he did as well as he did to get them in the Champions League, not because of how good of a manager he is, but because Spurs, Liverpool and Chelsea fell apart in that season. Last season, that didn't happen. None of those 3 fell apart. Man United did, to be fair, which is why they finished above them, but no other team fell apart, which is why they finished in 7th. I can't see them doing it again. I ain't gonna lie, I am becoming a little bit scared of West Ham, because they're building something impressive. Their transfer window has probably been better than most. They've signed star winger Crescencio Somerville from Leeds, and Max Kilman from Wolves, Nicholas Fulkrug from Dortmund, Jean-Claire Todibo from Nice, Aaron Wan-Bissaka from Man United. Their transfer window has been ridiculous. They had a brilliant transfer window last year as well. Alongside bringing in some brilliant players, they've been able to retain some brilliant players. Obviously, the likes of Jared Bowen, Mohamed Kudus, Lucas Paquetá. With all of that, I think West Ham will have a pretty good season. Villa are not going to have as good a season last year. Obviously, last year they managed to get themselves all the way into top 4, and that was an incredible achievement for them. Since then, they have gone on to lose the likes of Douglas Luiz, who they have since replaced with Amadou Onana, as well as Moussa Diaby, who left for Saudi Arabia. They've managed to retain pretty much most of their players. They've obviously brought in a few others on top of that, obviously the likes of Ian Maatsen to play at left back. However, I do not believe they're going to do as well in the league with Champions League football. I don't think they're going to be as bad as Newcastle were, because Newcastle were drastically underprepared for Champions League football. Their squad depth was poor, and Eddie Howe was not ready for that. Unai Emery is a serial European competitor. He'll know what's required in order to maintain Premier League position and go deep into the Champions League. I don't believe they'll do badly, but I can't see them finishing. They're not going to finish the top 4 again. Man United are having possibly one of the most overhyped transfer windows I've ever seen. Granted, they've made some good moves. I think Lenny Yoro is a pretty good signing. However, he's already injured, which is not a good start. I don't particularly understand the hype around Joshua Zirkzee. For me, he's just another Højlund. Man United fans will disagree with me on this, but Højlund did not have the best season last year. He missed a lot more chances than he scored. And Zirkzee's record's too similar for Højlund to make me think he's going to change that. They've since obviously signed Matthijs de Ligt and Mazraoui as well, both from Bayern, which I actually believe are probably two very good signings. They still have a giant hole in their midfield though, because they still don't have a defensive midfielder. Casemiro's legs are pretty much gone by this point. McTominay is not a proper DM. I wouldn't say it's a bad transfer window, but I do think a lot of Man United fans have been getting ahead of themselves with the transfers. I think it'll be a big improvement from last year, because I think last year was just a calamity on all fronts. Their defense was in pieces because of injuries, and there just seemed to be a lot of problems in the dressing room and the locker room. They'll get themselves back into Europe properly, but I don't think it'll be enough to go for top 4. And finally, we arrive at my boys, Chelsea. Our pre-season has not gone well so far. It hasn't. We've had only 1 win, a draw, 3 losses. When we get into the league itself, it could go brilliantly, or it could go awfully. Our transfer window hasn't been horrific. I think signing Tosin on a free is a pretty smart move, signing an experienced Premier League defender. I like the signing of Dewsbury Hall because he knows Maresca's system inside and out. Far and away, our best signing is Pedro Neto, a Premier League experienced winger who can play on both sides, who's a brilliant chance creator. We do still look frail at the back. That was the problem in pre-season. We look frail. So if we can hammer out those issues before the season starts, I think we could probably even push top 4. If we don't, we could finish 8th, possibly lower than that if we're not careful. Liverpool were an incredibly difficult club to place on this list. They've made 0 signings so far. We've heard there have been recent links that suggest they're about to sign Martin Zubimendi, which is going to be a great signing for them, I can already tell. I've seen links with Bayer Leverkusen's Piero Hincapié as well. That's a brilliant signing. If they get those 2 over the door, I think top 4 is a pretty good move for them. That the majority of their squad is aging, and if they're not careful, they're going to have to replace them all at once at this rate. Salah pretty much on his last legs at this point. Van Dijk, he's 33 now. He's not going to be around for much longer. They'll still have the likes of Alisson for a bit longer. Obviously, Trent's going to be there for a long time. They've now got Dominic Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister, which is going to be around for a while. Luis Diaz, if they manage to retain. They really need to be looking at alternatives to play striker. Diogo Jota has had an injury-ridden season, and Darwin Núñez is way too profligate to be leading the line. Darwin Núñez is the reason they lost the league. He is. If he could put away half the chances that he missed, they finished 2nd, if not 1st. But he is way too profligate to be leading the line for them. It did not help that Salah decided to have a mid-season wobble and finish the season pretty weakly. So when that happened, it all went to shit. We'll see what Arne Slot's made of. If they give him Zubimendi and Hincapié, those are two brilliant signings. If they don't, and they only sign one player or players on lower levels than that, they could be in trouble. I actually think Spurs are an underrated pick in the top 4. I think Spurs are going to have a decent season next year. They've since found themselves a proper number 9 since they signed Dominic Solanke, which is a good signing for them. Not really made any other major sign, and they've not really had any key losses either. I think the majority of their starting 11 is still around. The two biggest losses for them are probably Pierre-Emile Højbjerg and Emerson Royal to Marseille and Milan, respectively. Ange's biggest problem is going to be keeping his squad fit. Now, he had a very unfortunate circumstance that he lost half of his squad in one game. When we played them last season, he lost 4 of his men then. Udoka got sent off, so suspended a game. Romero got sent off and lost 3 games, and then Van de Ven and Maddison got injured. That derailed him massively, because then he got found out. He needs to make sure he doesn't make the same mistakes, and if he does, he will finish in the top 3. Truth be told, I have no idea if Arsenal can sustain another title challenge, but there's just no one else. Since Klopp left, there is now a massive power vacuum in the league. Only Arteta, I think, is in prime position to take up the mantle of being a rival to Man City now. But if the last 2 seasons have told us anything, it's that Arsenal can't do it. They just can't. They had the reason for the first time, which is that they lost arguably their most important player in William Saliba. Second season, they have no excuse. No one consequential got injured all season. Like, sure, they had injuries to what? Gabriel Jesus. Jesus barely played. Injuries to Martinelli. Martinelli barely played. Saka got injured towards the end of the season, but they ran him into the ground like a donkey, so that's their fault. Saliba didn't get injured. He was fine. They had Gabriel. They had Ben White. Like, they had Declan Rice. They had Martin Odegaard. They have no excuse for that. And I can't see them not making the same mistakes. Because it wasn't just the Villa game. The Villa game is when they really threw it away, but it wasn't just that. They lost at Fulham. They lost to West Ham. Like, there's just so many games where they threw points away because they don't know how to get it done. They have no league winners in that team. They have Zinchenko and Jesus, fair enough, but neither of them starts anymore. Like, since they've added Calafiori to the squad, Zinchenko's now isn't in the starting 11. Jesus barely started anyway, and he doesn't anymore. Like, they have no league winners in their starting team. They need someone who knows how to win a league. Until they have that, they ain't finishing any higher than second. I mean, you saw this coming, right? It's Man City. Do I even need to say anything? Pep Guardiola with Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. That's not really rocket science to work out that they're going to finish in the top spot. So those were my predictions for the Premier League season. Please, I beg you, let me know what you think of my predictions in the comments, and let me know what you think is going to happen this season. So, without further ado, we pray that this is a good season in general, and we pray it's a good season for Chelsea. Come on, boys. But until then, I am the Crimson Wolf, the reddest Chelsea fan on the internet. I will see you next time. Good luck with it.